We're back with Troy Luketta and Riz and the Believers. Riz, talk about how you connected with Troy, and I'm assuming he felt the music, but what was the bond you guys had in common?
Man, it was a really special thing coming together with Troy because, I connected with Troy through his son and out in the Bay Area, actually in Dublin.
Okay.
And so getting with Troy was cool because we kind of kicked it off on a family level through his son. And so we kind of got close through that, right out the gate and got to know Troy on a really personal level through family. So not only was it that being special, but again, kind of coming, being kind of the same people and having a lot of the same goals in mind and not knowing much about Troy and what his past was, which was funny because obviously he's got a wonderful past and such a has done such amazing things in not only just music, but just beyond the music. And and so for me, we kind of got to know each other about more of on a personal level, working out on this EP in Dublin. And man, it just kind of came together naturally. Obviously, something that is a dream come true. I feel like, I really wish that every artist, could have an opportunity to work with somebody like Troy and have a mentor like him. But I also know that, you know, that's, I got lucky for sure. I definitely got lucky, and that was something that I'm very grateful for. Um, but yeah, man, we hit it off. We started making music, and and he came in. Troy Jr. had gotten sick and was going through some recovery, and so Papa T, as I call him, comes into town, and he's like, Dad, can you help me out with this music? Something new and a little different from Troy's world. I kind of come from more of like a hip hop world and doing a lot of that, and then found it myself into like the reggae genre. And I don't like to pinhole myself into a
Sure.
specific
Good
genre.
music is good music. No terms added.
Yeah, and it's always been for me. It's always been about a message. Like I found myself when I hear my writings from 10 years ago plus, it's always been about the writing and the message for me. I've always felt like I'm a messenger and just trying to enlighten people as far as just that we all have a beautiful gift to give to the world. Pretty simple, and how, how amazing things we can do together and the power of love. Love never fails. And there's so much, within this music. And so I felt like, I chose music as my medium because it was like, how do I allow these words to resonate with people in a way that I'm not going to be too preachy or whatever, where they can really make an impact in somebody's life. And that's music. We all know that's the universal language in a way that you can kind of communicate through. So I chose music, something I did out of high school. And so when we got working and Troy, was listening to some of these songs, he's like, I love them, Riz, but I think they need some drums. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm kind of down with these program drums and the 808s or whatever I was used to at the time. And so me and him had this fun, couple moments there. And he's like, just let me put some drums on these songs, would you? And I did that because I come from, again, a kind of a different world where I was, leasing these instrumental tracks and working with different producers and just kind of had the music there, and I would just put the lyrics on top. I've never got to really make a record from scratch. And so that's what we have done here. Troy, and me did that with his son. COVID happened. And 2 years ago, Troy had called me, and he was in the studio doing an Atmos mix with a producer out there, and they brought up one of the songs we did, and he had said, "Man, this is some killer stuff. What are you doing with it?" And so Troy called me, and I was at a point where I had done a lot of work out here in Reno and Tahoe and Sacramento area, and doing some smaller tours, opening up for some people and my own gigs. And I was just ready, man, for that step. And so it was a perfect timing. He's like, Riz, what you got going, man? And I'm like, Troy, I'm ready to, he goes, why don't we come out here to Nashville? Let's finish what we started. So 4 days later, showed up on his doorstep, and we got to work. And it's been, again, just something that's out of a movie. I mean, you couldn't write this. We couldn't plan it ourselves. We've had so many amazing experiences. I think mostly just on personal levels, and just getting to work with some of the best musicians in the world, and the best people. And We've been working on this album for 2 years now from scratch. There's no samples really on this stuff. It's just original music, and that's something that I think I took for granted or just didn't even really understand how much goes into actually making a record. This is what Troy grew up doing. So somebody, I'm 30 years old. So I call Troy the old dinosaur, but there's all dinosaurs. There's something to be said about real music and really knowing what you're doing and going through those experiences and working with these people. So I could go on forever, Jay, but I'm very grateful and very humbled and really excited to finally get this music we've put everything into out to the world.
Well, there's something to be said about experience, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes people look at elders as old. I call them wise, you know, because they have that experience and they're still breathing fire, you know. Troy, like myself, you know, music has kept us young. Yeah, we've been around a while, but, you know, we still listen to some of that same music we grew up on. And, you know, I love the blending of sounds. To me, I always say there's only two kinds of music: music that moves you and music that doesn't. And forget all these terms that journalists come up with and categories and boxes and stuff like that. You know, rhythmic world music, and great vibes is really universal. Troy, talk about, had you been a fan of, say, Bob Marley and other reggae music, or what was it about this that drew you in?
I knew absolutely zero about reggae music.
Okay.
It's the one genre that I really hadn't tapped into, growing up. I got into the whole R&B thing and,
Yep.
the Motown and, the,
The
the
funk.
singer-songwriter, the Tower of Power funk stuff, the funk, all that good stuff, East Bay Grease and, being from the Bay Area. And I've always been uh, into songwriters and just
Yeah.
just music, man. I mean, Neil Diamond was one of and is still to
Yeah.
this day one of my favorites. The band was blasting Metallica and I'm blasting Neil Diamond. you know
Great song is a
and,
great song, you
and
know,
by
it
the
lives
way,
forever.
and love Metallica too, man. I mean,
Yeah. Well, I
so
love the diversity. To go from one to the other is natural for
well, I
me.
mean, the thing about what's happened with me over the years, and I'll come back to your question. I mean, I was blessed to work with Keith Emerson before he had passed, and I did a record in Munich, Germany, with a 70-piece orchestra. But I had also played on a Doris Day record, her last record, where I'm playing brushes, and I played on an R&B record with Frida Payne. And so the diversity of where I come from is really strong, and that's what I had always strived for as a player, just to play music. So the whole Bob Marley thing, I mean, we just got to experience the thing in Tough Gong, which I don't know if you're familiar with yet, but
Yes, of course.
Chris will tell you all about it. That was a great accident or just fate as it will, as it happened. But I mean, I didn't know anything. All I knew about the reggae music is the kick drum would always fall into three, man, the way they would play the music.
Yeah.
So I literally, when I recorded that Don't Stop Trying, I mean, I had set my drums up. My engineer, Jack Campitelli, was in here, and I said, hey, man, I want to get some drums. I want to see how my drums are sounding. I took a half pass at it, came in and listened to it, and I was tired. I was done for the day. And I was like, man, I'll hit it tonight one time. I'll come back in the morning and we'll start fresh. But I did. I hit it, and that's what you got, man. I came back the next morning, listened, and I'm like, it feels good to me, and everything felt right. And I was like, I don't have to overthink this thing, and I don't have to start, because once you get to that place where you start everything, you start second guessing everything, it turns into a lot. Now you can go after those records, and I've done everything, all sides of the coin when it comes to recording.
Yeah.
But my experience has always been my intuition of just kind of letting the music speak to me and be playing and answering that call is always the best thing when I'm out of my head. If I get into my head and I start thinking about it, it becomes a bit premeditated. With all the music that we've done so far, I've been really blessed to have just kind of played it, and get everything. And, if I got to work at something and figure something out and something needs a little more work, fine. But coming back to the Marley thing, there's a concert I've been watching a lot of. It's Bob Marley and the Wailers. I think it's 1976, live at the Rainbow
Yeah,
in
London.
it's freaking insane. It's so good, and I can't even believe just, I'm glad I really wasn't plugged into all of that before I got into where I was at, because it might have taken my thought process somewhere different. And
Yeah.
I've just been able to play music and do my own interpretation, which I like. And I like where Riz sits because it's the same thing for him. He doesn't know my world at all. I mean, he didn't even know who Tesla was. He's not even familiar with anything, which is great,
You
I'll
come
talk
in
to
with a fresh perspective. You're not tainted.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to him about Jimmy Page, and he's like, "Who?" And and I love that, because it's just sincere and real. He's 30 years old. He grew up in a different place and different music, and here we are combining our worlds, and we just speak the same language together. I think that's what's so cool.
That's beautiful. And Troy, by the way, that's another thing we have in common. Mark Bonilla. I did some work with him and Keith Emerson, before he passed. Those projects, the Three Fates and all
Yeah.
that great stuff. Keith Emerson, rest in peace. That's probably
Yeah.
somebody else you don't know, Riz. Emerson, Lake and Palmer. They
I seen
headlined
the
California Jam, 300,000 people out here, and so
just from what Troy showed me, and I mean, just blown away. I mean, that's a different style. I mean, that's a whole different world. I mean, that is like the changes and all of the different elements that are going into that music. I mean, I was like, how did you remember these? Like watching Troy doing the drums, I was just like, how do you even remember that? That's ridiculous. It was like an hour long of just consistent changes, and yeah, I was blown away. Yeah, wow, that's a whole nother level, whole nother level. Those are like real musicians, and it's a different world, from making a record and doing that kind of player and kind of just coming up with a catchy melody and doing something like that and formatting a song to doing what the Keith Emerson stuff
yeah.
was. Whoa,
But
like
but then
totally
again, between classical and reggae and rock and all that, the common ground is, again, it's a good vibe.
yeah,
It's good music that impacts you. Now
yeah,
talk about Riz and Troy. Obviously, there's been a big trend the last few decades of rock bands incorporating reggae. Of course, you got, the 311s. You have, I know you guys did some stuff with the likes of Dirty Heads, and of course the Marley Boys, and all these bands, Slightly Stupid, all these bands that come from the rock world and the hip hop world, but they incorporate reggae into their sound. It's quite a movement. A lot of these big reggae festivals, you see
yeah,
this blending of traditional and rock oriented reggae.
yeah. Those are the people I think got me into this. I mean, growing up for me again, it was kind of hip hop, and then I got into that genre. And I remember like I used to set up as a vendor in some of these festivals, Dry Diggins and Cali Roots and Cali
Yeah.
Vibes, way back 10 years ago with my aunt's company Vibes Up. So I was like the Vibes Up guy, the healthy happy place that we had all the essential oils and gemstones and stuff. And I remember like our first year at Dry Diggins, Scott from Stick Figure set up across from us, and I think he had like working a side stage or doing one of the smaller stages, and selling his hats, and didn't really know much of him. And then that's really what really opened me up to reggae, was working these festivals for my aunt, Vibes Up. And man, I felt like, it's just when you find your people. And I was like, oh my gosh, because I was working, and then I'm like, wait, this is what I want to do. Like I was already doing music, but then I found my people through that. And I was like, oh, this is a whole community of people that are thinking the same thing I'm thinking, are kind of into what I'm into, and just the whole vibe of that community. And so then getting to see Dirty Heads, Slightly Stupid, no, knowing them, but seeing a band live is completely different. We know how that
Yeah.
goes. And you know, Troy's still yet to see some of these bands, because we opened up for the Sugar Shack on Friday of Reggae Rise Up this last year in Florida.
Okay.
And so he came Friday, and then he came Sunday to watch Steven and Damien. But I think Troy missed Saturday, which was Slightly Stupid. So I told him I can't wait for him to see Slightly, because I feel like that is really that band that has, I feel, the most incorporated real jam band. Like they are the OGs to me. And I think that a lot of this genre, as far as for that kind of jam band stuff, that kind of West Coast, I love those guys, man. And that's really what lit my fire was, that music. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm gonna start making some music like this. And then it was funny because once I started to look for that style of music and kind of looking into that production style, it seemed like my voice and my spirit or my soul like blended. It was like it clicked, and I was like, oh, I'm not a gangster rapper. All right, this is more of my vibe here, Not that I was ever trying to be a gangster rapper, but I was like, oh, this makes sense, and it
Yeah, a
felt
blending of
and the
sound.
melody and the vibe. I was like, okay, this is who I am. Now I can kind of find my way through this, and you know, I just love the community, man. Like I really do. I started as a vendor, and when we went to Reggae Rise Up, I kind of told the crowd that, like, listen, I've been a vendor at these. So now being able to be on stage was another, dream come true. And
Another level.
yeah, man, that's what you always want as a fan. You're watching, going, oh, I want my time to come. When's my? But it takes time, and you have to still have that persistence. You can't just. It doesn't just happen. I had
You
to
kind
move.
of did some homework by being a vendor and then leading up to that.
Yeah,
By the
we're
way,
all.
have you been to Red Rocks?
I have not.
Troy, have you been to Red Rocks outside of Denver?
Sold it out 2 nights with
Oh my
Tesla.
God. Tell Riz how incredible this music you're talking about. Slightly Stupid sells out 2 nights in a row there.
Yep.
All the big reggae jam bands play
Yep.
Red Rocks, the most beautiful natural amphitheater, I say in the world, but definitely in America, right there outside of Denver.
Oh
The
yeah.
Red Rock formations behind the stage and both sides of the fans were formed naturally thousands of years ago. It's a very spiritual
You'll come and
place.
see us there, Jay. We'll be making that happen.
It is it is incredible. Troy will tell you, man, from the
Oh yeah.
stage, Troy, looking up at those red rocks and the fans, is that a special feeling or what?
Oh God, yeah. The first time we played there, and then we came back to headline 2 nights, blew my freaking mind. And we played there. We've done a lot of shows there over the
Sure.
years. But yeah, looking out at that, and the air's thinner, it's mile high, and
Yeah.
that whole thing. So, you know, yeah, well, it's beyond, anything you
It's
can
hard to
try to
describe.
explain. Yeah, it really is.
Until you're there and experience it.
Yeah.
It's like trying to explain what a beautiful, lake in Switzerland's like.
I just love it because I just see God everywhere. And
Yeah.
there you get to those places, Yosemite, which I've never been. I've only seen pictures,
Yeah.
but I know these places. When you get out there, man, you're like, well, even for the non-believers, whatever that might be,
It
they
humbles you.
got to believe in something that is,
Yeah. Yeah.
something
These things were
extraordinary.
created by a construction crew.
Yeah, right. And where did the construction crew come from?
Yeah.
But we won't get into that.
Well, Riz, as you sit up in the seating, looking down at the stage and the Red Rocks behind it, you're on a hill, so you're looking at all the lights of Denver behind the stage. It is unbelievable.
Yeah. It's a bucket list for me for sure.
Oh man.
I almost just don't want to go till till we're playing it, because I don't want, it's like I got to just set that goal.
Yeah, I'd say from the stage, you're looking at the stage. Either way is great, but there's
Yeah,
no question. I've spoken to a lot of artists,
that's their favorite.
and a lot of bands actually will lose money and play Red Rocks rather than play a bigger arena in the middle of downtown Denver
Oh yeah.
because of that.
Oh yeah. All day long, man. I mean, that to get experience something like that, I mean, I would do the same. I don't blame them.
Yeah. Talk about the Tough Gong thing. Obviously, this One Love Bob Marley movie's done really, really well. I say his music, which started in the '70s, and Troy, you talk about that live at the Rainbow, video. His music seems like it's everywhere, and of course, his sons and family are out there everywhere. But talk about the influence that Bob started.
Oh man, I mean, Bob's changed the world, you know. I feel that when you just hear the name Bob Marley, you know, you can't help but smile or feel of unity and positivity and for what he stands for and the I love the spirit that Bob had, you know, as far as with all this positivity, he took on so much. You know, he was really taking on a whole lot, and he had to stand up, you know, stand up for what he believed in equality. And you know, I felt like that rebel inside of him, you know, is something to admire. I feel like a lot of the great people in the world that have really had an impact, a major impact, had to really have that rebel inside, that fire, and really stand up for what they felt was right. And I think that that there's something to be said for that. You know, that's not an easy task, and I felt that Bob did it through just such a beautiful way, through his music and through such a beautiful message. And so he's always been an inspiration and an icon and an idol in my life because he's just, you know, he did it through a beautiful way in a very powerful way. And so for us to be able to, you know, be a fan of, for me to be able to be a fan of that growing up. And then, you know, we met Squidly Cole at a Stephen Marley concert because I wanted to show Troy about this. You know, I
Yeah.
was like, you got to see Stephen Marley, bro. Like he's epic. You know, it just, you got to pay respect, you know, and just get to see it. And he had a wonderful time. For everybody that knows or been to a Stephen Marley concert, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh,
It's a very
sure.
spiritual experience. And we did go to Ziggy Marley too, actually, Troy. That was cool too. But anyways, we met Squidly Cole out there. Um, and he's been drumming for, I think he did the 93 World Tour with Ziggy Marley. He's out right now with Stephen Marley. And so he comes out from backstage. We're at the City Winery and he comes up to Troy, somebody and introduced them. And so they hit it off because they're both drummers. And
Yeah.
Squidly Cole has his dad's a, you know, kind of like a reggae legend himself, ska. And so he's like, oh, I'm working with my buddy Riz here, man. Riz, rap, do something, you know, do your thing. And so I start freestyling and Squidly starts beatboxing and we just hit it off, man. And he's like, you come out to Jamaica, we'll take you to Bob Marley's studio, we'll make some music. And I'm like, come on, Troy, we got to take him up on this. I remember it was so funny because we were like, cool, man, that's awesome, you know. And we exchange numbers and we kind of walk out cool. We just like walk out the doors looking at each other. We get in the car like, oh my God, man, that was crazy, you know, like little kids, you know. That's what I love about Troy is he's got that energy, man.
Yeah.
And we just lit up in the car. We were like, oh man, we're going to Jamaica. We got to make this happen. And we got home and he texted us. We're like, oh, he texted us, you know. We were just really excited. And so love you, Squidly. He's like our brother now, man. He took us out to Jamaica and, you know, we
Yes.
got to experience Jamaica from a real beautiful, and I feel a really authentic way. And for me being, you know, I feel like I just like to do things right, you know, and real, you know. I don't want to do anything that's just like, that's fake, you know. And it's like, okay, if we're going to go out there and Troy was like, no, man, we're not going to fly tracks back and forth, man. Like, we're coming to Jamaica. We want to see this firsthand. We want to experience it. We want to embody that. And we want to capture the sound in your studio, you know, in your country. And so we did that. And we were in the heart of Kingston, Jamaica, right off of Trenchtown. I never, you know, experienced anything like that, you know,
Yeah.
and
Well, you need a guide like Squidly, you know? You're
we
showing
couldn't
up as a tourist, you're not going to see all that.
we couldn't drive, we couldn't do anything. And Squidly gave us a firsthand experience. He couldn't have paid for a better tour guide and experience because he gave
Of
us the
course.
real truth of being, you know, being in that and what he's experienced and what they're going through and how that world is. And it was something like, again, out of a movie. We were just all in shock, I felt the whole time. But you know, I mean, even one of the days we go out and we saw the Bob Marley Museum and we're like almost done. And this was a cool part for me because we're in the Bob Marley Museum. Squidly comes and finds me and John Salloway and he's like, and finds us and he's like, Troy, John, Riz, come on, we got to go make music. Let's go. Like interrupts the tour. We got to go to the studio. Let's go. We're like, all right, well, thanks guys for for the tour. We got to go to the studio. So we went from Bob Marley's museum to Bob Marley's studio, you know, and that same day, and it was just like, what is happening, you know? And being there, you know, Mondez, love you, brother. You know, we got to work and just be in that space for, I think, you know, a week straight. Got some background vocals from some Jamaican younger girls out there, Cordy, Ashley, and one of the other ones, forget her name. And we got some steel pan, and watching Squidly, man, me and Troy were just like, wow, like he is that music.
Yeah.
He is it. I'll never forget this quote that he told us, and it was my favorite quote. He says, you know, because every day was like a lesson. It was an experience. I'm not kidding. Every day was like a movie, and this total adventure and journey that you, if you open to it, you're learning something. And I remember he was saying, talking about music and the spiritual meaning behind music and paying homage to the music and for the people and the bigger purpose to it. And he's like, you know, the more you love the music, the more the music loves you back. And I was just like, wow, bro. Like, that to me said it all. I was like, you know, when you come from it at that point, I feel that it's an endless amount of abundance and prosperity, you know, because that tunnel doesn't run dry, you know. So pretty cool, man. Really cool. Could go on forever on that
No
experience.
doubt that we'll have to do chapter 2 on that. And
Sure.
hats off to the great Chris Blackwell, Island Records, for taking a chance in the middle of metal and punk rock and new wave. He signs this guy, Bob Marley, who was like completely left field back in the mid 70s, and, you know, started this movement that gets bigger every year. So I love those risk takers. And
Yeah.
Troy, how has this experience working with Riz and, of course, going to Jamaica opened your musical vocabulary and your appreciation for a whole nother level of vibes and great music?
Um, well, it's probably, I mean, it's changed everything about where I sit today, the choices I make, why I do what I do.
Yeah.
Didn't realize that. I mean, I was out this last year. I did about 7 months worth of Guess Who dates, and I was out there playing. Great band, loved all the guys, and that's where we got Michael Devon and Michael Sterto from the Believers. Before Michael went and did the Dead Daisies,
Yeah.
Michael Devon. But I was out there playing, and you know, I mean, you know, after Tesla and touring as much as we had, and I just love music, and I knew what we had started with Riz and I knew how I felt and how compassionate I was, and what I believed. Um, I knew I had to make a choice, and you know, so that choice had come at right at the tail end when I was finishing up with the Guess Who. I just said, okay, this is it. I'm done. I'm not doing anything else. I'm going to commit to this thing. You know, I mean, Riz deserves that. He has to have somebody like that, and I couldn't do it part time. This stuff it's all or nothing, you know.
Yeah.
And I've always said, you know, if you're not willing to stick your neck out far enough to be chopped off, don't bother. I've been doing that my whole life. That's just who I am, a part of what I do and how I do and how what's instilled in me, you know. And when I believe in something, you can't tell me anything different. And one thing that I know in my heart that Riz is a stadium act. I tell everybody this. I've been saying it since day one. He's not an arena act. This is a stadium show waiting to happen. And you know, that's what I've always believed. I still believe that. And you know, we're on our way to hopefully proving that, you know, God willing, you know, that this music is it's music with purpose, you know, it has to happen. It, you know, and I see it happening, and everything, the stars and the planets are all completely lining up. And I have learned a great deal about, you know, like you were talking about the question. I says, you know, the things that I have learned, you know, most importantly is what not to do, you
Sure.
know, and where I'm at in my life and being true to myself and making sure that I'm, you know, and it's not about me, you know, I'm the facilitator on top of this thing with Riz, and we make all the decisions together. It's his, this is his music. I'm here to serve Riz and the music,
Yeah.
however that is. in the big picture. Wherever I fall into that category, if I'm here, the next day I'm over here picking up trash, that's my job. Whatever I got to do, it doesn't matter what it is. You know, I'm that committed to being whoever I need to be and letting go of whatever I need to let go of. So that, you know, it's changed everything about how I think, you know, and how I feel and, you know, how I do. So it's been a really great education for myself. I've learned a lot through this process about who I am as well.
Well, congratulations to both of you. And Riz, I know Red Rocks will be a step towards those stadiums and festival dates. So we look forward to hearing about that experience. And our special guest is the one and only Troy Luketta, drummer, percussionist extraordinaire, and Riz from Riz and the Believers. Go check out rizandthebelievers.com for all the information. Can't wait to see you guys on the road, more music. Hopefully this is the first of many conversations. Thank you, brothers.
Thank you.
Jake.
Man. Thanks for having us, Jake. Appreciate it.